The woman had known. So that's what's going on, Maomao thought. She was sure of it. The kitchen staff finished their work after cleaning the dinner dishes. It didn't require many hands, so people were assigned to the work on a rotating schedule. Maomao and Xiaohong, as mother and daughter, were typically given dishwashing duty together. They worked silently in the moonlight. Maomao wasn't the type to start conversations, and Xiaohong was the same. When they were together, they didn't talk much. Tonight, however, Maomao spoke up. "I'd like to ask you to do something," she whispered, even though there was no one else around. "What is it?" Xiaohong was a clever girl. She already seemed to know what Maomao had in mind. Chapter 21. Serving dinner. Maomao was preparing potatoes again. "What is this new dish you're proposing?" the middle-aged woman asked. The bandits had complained about the meager quantities of food, so the women had been trying to think of ways to quiet the grumbling. When Maomao raised her hand, she said, "We cut up steamed potatoes." "Peels and all?" the woman asked. "Peels and all," Maomao replied. They used the huge pot to fry meat in oil, then added the quartered potatoes. They flavored everything with wine and soy paste. Plenty of spices were added too. And although they did not have much to spare, they even added some honey to make the whole thing glisten. Wow, the smell alone was enough to make the mouth water. The flavor would be perfect to entice the diners to drink some more wine. "It certainly seems like it will be popular," said a woman holding a potato. "I'm only sorry it has to go to that bunch of louts," said another. "Don't say that, auntie. If they caught you, they'd beat you to death. Don't you think I know that?" sigh. "Why, oh, why must we constantly give them our best food?" Maomao would have loved to sample the dish herself, but meat was monitored closely here. Hardly anyone except One-Eyed Dragon and his men got any. The rest of them might get the scraps in their soup if they were lucky, or maybe whatever was left on the bandits' proverbial table. "All right, I'm going to make more of this," Maomao said. "Yes, thank you." "We will have to steam some more potatoes," one of the aunties said. "Oh, I have that covered," Maomao replied. That was when Xiaohong appeared with a basket full of mid-sized potatoes. "We can use lots of smaller potatoes to make them easier to steam. After they are steamed, it will not be so hard to chop them." Maomao plopped the potatoes into a steamer. They had to keep cracking or they would not be in time for dinner. "Listen," said one of the women as Maomao was frying some more meat. "I know the two of you are going to serve One-Eyed Dragon tonight. Will you be all right?" She looked at Maomao and Xiaohong. Serving duty came to everyone on the kitchen staff equally, regardless of age. That bear usually contents himself with widows and the non-believers, but once in a while he makes a move on the poor ladies serving his dinner. "Your husband is still alive, isn't he?" She was worried what might happen to Maomao if the outlaw took her. Presumably there was a chance that, from a religious perspective, such an incident would be considered adultery. "I will watch myself," Maomao said, concentrating on her frying. She did not think there could be so many unusual people in the world who would be interested in someone like her, but it could not hurt to be careful. They took the bandits' dinner to the church. Everyone ate breakfast whenever they felt like it, but dinner was eaten in the church as a group. It was also a chance for everyone to report in. Maomao had estimated there were about 50 bandits in the town, but it looked like there might be closer to 30. It was a surprisingly small number. She and Xiaohong sat beside One-Eyed Dragon. Dinner tonight was Maomao's potatoes and meat creation, along with butter, bread, and a lamb and vegetable stew. Goat's milk was included in the stew to give it some body. The alcohol was fermented horse milk and gave off a very unique smell. One-Eyed Dragon also received something extra, patty made of vinegared horse meat, ground and worked with pepper and aromatic herbs. "All right, eat up," One-Eyed Dragon said, and his gang began to do exactly that. The meat and potatoes dish received rave reviews and was quickly consumed. A few people who didn't like it reached for one of the other offerings. "Oh, don't be picky, just eat the damn stuff," Maomao thought. But her thoughts were never going to reach these selfish, self-interested marauders. "You eat too." One-Eyed Dragon piled potatoes, bread, butter, raw horse meat and plenty of stew onto Maomao's and Xiaohong's plates, shoveling it on as if he were feeding livestock. "Gladly, sir." Maomao picked up a potato with her bare hands. She couldn't even use chopsticks. The meat was messy but delicious. It ought to be Maomao was the one who had prepared it, and she'd made sure to mix in copious amounts of spices. One-Eyed Dragon watched her eat intently. He might look like he was generously giving her food, but really he wanted to see if it was poisoned. When Maomao finished the food and still looked hale and hearty, he patted the jar of alcohol. Maomao poured some of the horse milk brew, and was about to drink it when the bandit leader growled, "Not you." Give it to her. He held the cup towards Xiaohong. The girl quailed, but Maomao looked at her and nodded. Xiaohong nodded back. Thank you, sir, she said. Then she took the cup and drained the contents. Ah, she burped. The flavour must have been more agreeable than one might expect. Horse milk wine was fermented, yes, but the alcohol content wasn't very high. Maomao had heard that in Isei province even babies drank it, and it seemed that was true. I'll try some as well, just for form's sake, Maomao said. Then she poured herself a cup and drank. It really is light on the alcohol. Frankly, she could have done with something a bit drier. One-eyed dragon must have finally been convinced that everything was safe, because he set to eating and drinking. Maomao kept the alcohol flowing, making sure his cup was never empty. The meal felt less like dinner and more like a drunken banquet, and proceeded slowly. The men conducted themselves with abandon, spilling their drinks, throwing bread at each other, and on and on. Here we are trying to save every scrap of food. Maomao looked at the meat and potatoes scattered on the floor. She thought it was a waste, but she wasn't going to eat off the ground. These leftovers would be used to make the meal for the locals. During the celebration, someone stood up from his seat. He said, I need to relieve myself. Then he left the church. Maomao picked up the empty alcohol bottle. I'll bring another one, she said. She called Xiaohong over and was about to step out when One-Eyed Dragon stopped her. Hold on a moment. It doesn't take two of you to get a bottle, does it? Maomao paused. Of course not, sir. She gave the bottle to Xiaohong and busied herself putting more food on One-Eyed Dragon's empty plate. Most of the dishes without meat hadn't been touched. She had noticed that One-Eyed Dragon always chewed on the right side of his mouth. The left side seemed to have an ulcer. Maybe the bottle was too heavy for Xiaohong because she tripped and fell. There was a crash as the bottle shattered. I'm so sorry. I'll clean it up right away, she said. One-Eyed Dragon had been drinking steadily since he finished his horse meat. Meanwhile, the men started leaving their seats one by one. I got to use the toilet. Me too. One-Eyed Dragon raised an eyebrow. Almost there. A little more. Another man stood up, then covered his mouth. His pallor didn't look very good. He stumbled along a few steps, leaning on the wall for support, and finally crumpled to his knees. HRRGHHH. He spewed sick everywhere. The bandits nearby scuttled away from him, but none of them looked much better than he did. Finally, they looked at the food they'd been consuming so greedily moments before. If it had happened to just one of them, it might have been a case of an unlucky drunk, but the sickness took another and then another. Maomao discovered she was the subject of a very intense glare. You put something in this, One-Eyed Dragon said. It could be food poisoning. We didn't have many fresh ingredients to work with, Maomao said, trying to make it look like she believed this was an act of God. Unfortunately, that didn't work on One-Eyed Dragon. She could almost see steam coming out of his ears. She lost no time hiding behind the altar. You bitch, One-Eyed Dragon howled and lunged to his feet only to come crashing back down. His hands were shaking. You put something in my food. We both checked the food for poison. Of course they put something in it. Now, why was Maomao feeling fine while the bandits were sick as a pack of dogs? Simply put, it was a matter of quantity consumed. Maomao hadn't eaten enough of the stuff in her tasting to make herself sick. The sprouts and peels of the potatoes were toxic, with the potential to cause vomiting and diarrhea. She'd had time to kill in the Western capital, so she'd conducted some experiments, testing to see how much it took to give herself a stomachache. Much to the exasperation of those around her, of course. Potato toxins caused tingling. Normally, the bandits would have noticed, but if it was true that the food supply was limited and occasionally included rotten ingredients, they would have grown inured to such sensations. To be sure, Maomao had been including potato sprouts in their meals for the past several days. The sprouts were the most toxic part of the potato, but green peels were fairly potent as well. Green indicated that the potato wasn't ripe yet, and leaving it out in the sun only made the peels greener. That was the first thing Maomao had asked Xiaohong to do: collect small potatoes and put them where they would get plenty of sun. She had of course anticipated that some of the bandits would eat the potatoes and some wouldn't. The people with a discerning palate had preferred other dishes, but Maomao had put something special in those too, namely ground nutmeg. They had so much of the stuff that she could have started a small business with it, so supply wasn't an issue. Nutmeg could be used for its medicinal properties, but too much of it was toxic. It could induce nausea, cramps, and palpitations, as well as severe confusion. And Maomao had included plenty of it in the meat patty she'd made especially for One-Eyed Dragon. You filthy little... One-Eyed Dragon shook and shivered, but still bared his teeth. He clutched his favored weapon, an axe. Maomao kept moving, trying to keep herself from being swallowed up by fear. One-eyed dragon tried and failed to follow her. He took a few swings with his axe but kept dropping it. When Xiaohong tripped, Maomao had rubbed oil on the axe's handle while pretending to clean it. If One-eyed Dragon had been smart, he would have had a cloth or something wrapped around the haft, but it was just plain wood and very slippery. What's going on? I didn't even eat that much. Ah, but you drank plenty. Over the past few days' meals, Maomao had learned that One-eyed Dragon was a picky eater with a taste for meat and drink. She knew he was unlikely to touch the potatoes and that he was big enough that the nutmeg wasn't likely to affect him on its own. So Maomao had tampered with the alcohol too, the drink. It's gotta be. But wait, the kid, she drank it too, no problem. Maomao and Xiaohong were both in perfect health. I'm glad it had the intended effect. In the alcohol, Maomao had put the snake venom the Lady Byaroshi had given her. How had she and Xiaohong escaped its effects unharmed? He had chosen a perfect time to have an injured mouth. Maomao remembered what the woman had said. One-eyed Dragon had bitten the inside of his mouth and taken it out on the unfortunate villager. Snake venom was a stamina tonic. If you took it by mouth, it would be dissolved in your gastric juices. Maomao had anticipated the possibility that Xiaohong might be told to try the drink. That is why she served horse milk alcohol instead of something stronger. She had checked the inside of Xiaohong's mouth thoroughly before putting this plan in motion, making sure she had no sores or bad teeth. This was the second thing she had requested of the girl. If the inside of one's mouth was injured, it was a different story. The wound provided a point of entry for the toxin, which wouldn't be neutralized but could travel throughout the body. Meanwhile, the unique flavor of the horse milk alcohol hid the taste of the venom. You'll pay for this. Swaying, One-eyed Dragon raised a hand. Get her, catch the woman, he ordered. He could barely get his tongue around the words, but he still had it in him to tell his men what to do. Those bandits who still had the wherewithal approached Maomao. Not all of them had eaten her poisoned food, of course. Variations in body type meant even those who were each affected differently. Maomao, however, had planned for a worse situation than this. She just wanted a fighting chance. She had to buy time somehow and run somehow. Then this might work out. Maomao darted between the pillars, overturning a jar of oil as she went. The bandits, already barely keeping their feet, slipped and fell. It looked like something out of a comedy routine, but for Maomao it was a matter of life and death. As she ran, she managed to give the church bell a great ring. That should make it clear that this was an emergency. Do it now. More and more of One-eyed Dragon's men joined the chase, and Maomao found herself cornered. They're gonna get me. In desperation, she grabbed a nearby plate and flung it at her pursuers. It was at just that moment that the church door flew open with a bang. Who the hell is that? One-eyed Dragon demanded, turning unsteadily toward the door. Could he tell who was there? Took your damn time about it, Maomao thought, looking at the man who stood there with his companions. Long time no see, Bear Man, the newcomer said. I know that voice. One-eyed Dragon leaned against a pillar. Who did he see with his one remaining eye? Looks like you've been living it up out here. If I'd known you would sink this low, I'd have taken both your eyes. The man making this unsettling pronouncement had a face that looked noble yet wild. Shikyo, you son of a bitch. It was Shikyo, accompanied by a group of Byaroshi, and Maomao could see her lady escort among them. All right, let's clean up, shall we? Shikyo shouted. The Byaroshi raised their hands in a cheer of agreement. Seriously, could they have left it any later? Maomao heaved a great sigh and slumped to the floor. Chapter 22, How Things Turned Out. The cleanup of the bandits was almost comically quick. The ones using the toilet found themselves hog-tied, while those in the church put up token resistance, but were subdued and arrested with almost no bloodshed. Still, with so many of the bandits suffering from vomiting and diarrhea, the place was hellish in a whole new way, and we'll refrain from describing it in too much detail. Maomao did not want to be the one who had to clean up. She did find herself face to face with Shikyo, and she frowned intensely. The Lady Byaroshi was to one side of her, while Xiaohong, overjoyed to be reunited with her uncle, was on the other. They had borrowed one of the assembly rooms. Guards were posted outside to discourage any eavesdropping. I think it's about time you explained what's going on, Maomao said, showing no sign of intimidation despite being faced with a man who weighed at least twice as much as she did. The Lady Byaroshi left the room with Xiaohong, perhaps as a sign of consideration. Believe me, I'd love to, but maybe we should start by reintroducing ourselves. How much do you know about me? Don't hold back. Tell me everything. Maomao decided to take him at his word. You're Master Gyukyuan's grandson and Master Gyukuo's oldest son. You are the nephew of Empress Gyukyu. In a word, your bloodline is perfectly respectable, but your behavior is anything but. You are not much favored in the current succession dispute. You once sold fake bottles of very exclusive wine, and some people claim you have ties to bandit groups. While I am at it, I think you should do a better job raising your own son. If you are just going to let him grow up like that, maybe you should have another child. Well, I did say not to hold back. Shikyo did not look offended by Maomao's words. Thanks to you, Gyukyuan returned safely, although he was pretty traumatized from being chased hither and yon by bandits. He continued, All right, my turn. You are Grand Commandant Kan's daughter. Publicly you are here as a court lady serving as an assistant to the medical office, but in reality you are a favorite of the Moon Prince, is that right? Because I was born to a courtesan with whom Grand Commandant Kan was close, he has mistaken me for his daughter, that is all. As to the Moon Prince, I can tell you only that he values me for my ability to check food for poison. You had to make sure to nip these misunderstandings in the bud. Very well. We'll pretend that's true. Maomao wasn't sure she liked the way Shikyo said that, but she chose to ignore it. Otherwise they would never get anywhere. Now, how did things end up like this? Where should I even start? Shikyo grunted and drummed his fingers on the table. I know I have a reputation as some kind of gang leader, but perhaps you'd understand if I said I set up a Byaroshi agency. Or more properly, I purchased a small agency and succeeded to its leadership. What about the bandit connections? How could I be on good terms with pirates? That bear has had it out for me ever since I took his eye. Once I set up shop as a Byaroshi, he started making a nuisance of himself in my territory. Sometimes he'd even claim to be with my agency. So I've had to labor under these ridiculous rumors that we were somehow in league with each other. Maomao was leery of taking Shikyo's story completely at face value, but it more or less lined up with what Chu had told her. Actually, it's Chu's information that's suspicious. If Maomao accepted exactly what Chu said, there was a contradiction. You spoke about Shikyo as if he were a lazy outcast, yet she had helped Maomao escape with him. Knowing Chu well, I wouldn't be surprised if she had carefully shaped the truth to mislead me. Was she trying to prevent me from becoming involved with Shikyo? If so, Maomao would need to listen to Shikyo's story and compare the facts as she understood them. She decided to get straight to the point. Why was someone trying to kill you? And why did it mean I had to leave the Western capital? It's a long story, I expect it is. Maomao didn't mind how long the story was, she just wanted him to tell it quickly. It began not long after the Moon Prince arrived. I was asked to accompany a caravan to the Western capital. Another Byaroshi would oversee the first part of the journey, but after they left their territory, I would be in charge. Did you accept the job knowing the caravan came from a foreign country? I had a good idea that it did. And I suspect they asked for me because they knew who I was. I'm sure they assumed that even if Gyukuo found out what they were up to, his son would be able to smooth things over. The Byaroshi were well aware of his xenophobia, you see. And what about you, his son? Did you share it? Empress Gyukyuo had been tormented in her youth by Gyukuo's children. Did that make this man just as xenophobic as his father? Shikyo took a moment to answer. Yes, I used to. Taking my cues from my father, I hated outlanders as much as he did. I realized, though, that in a country that shared so many borders with other lands, excluding foreigners would benefit nobody. Maomao sipped the horse milk alcohol they had in lieu of tea. It was from the unpoisoned supply, of course. As it turned out, however, these visitors were not people who should have been let into Li lightly. Did they include a foreign VIP? Yes, although I didn't know that at first. My suspicions only took shape gradually. How so? Shikyo held up his pointer finger. The fact that they asked me about the Moon Prince's presence in the area, for one thing. Then there were the pursuers who showed up shortly after these visitors did. They seemed awfully persistent, too much so to be after an ordinary merchant. They were a good deal of trouble. Also, the fact that there were wanted posters going around. At first I thought my new friends might be criminals, but that didn't seem to be quite the case. Finally, they claimed to be from Sheol, but they had northern accents. Visitors from Sheol, with which Li has diplomatic relations, would be one thing, but if they were from Hokyuaran, that could be a problem. Hokyuaran, Maomao echoed. When Shikyo mentioned the wanted posters, she remembered the paper the bear man had consulted. I thought they might be plotting to assassinate the Moon Prince, but that wasn't how they behaved. They had some other objective. Like what? They'd clearly gone out of their way to arrive while Jinchi was there. Why, a desperate bid for political asylum, perhaps. Maybe they thought that with the Moon Prince near at hand, their pursuers from their own nation would find it hard to cross the border. I keep asking myself whether their methods were ingenious or insane, and I come up with a different answer every time. Maomao thought that would be a lot of trouble. Meanwhile, the man before her had been keeping his head down and running. The swarm held us up something terrible, Shikyou said. It generated a lot of anti-foreign sentiment, but fortunately we were able to find safe haven in the post town, thanks to my uncle Dahai. I admit, though, I started to sweat when our dear guest fell ill and suddenly needed a doctor. Maomao paused, a VIP at the post town who needed a doctor, that rang a very, very loud bell. This VIP, were they a child by any chance? That's right. Maomao put her head in her hands, I knew it. I couldn't cool my heels in the port town forever, but my father's death complicated matters. What changed with Master Jyaku-O's passing? If you had the choice between someone who would lend a sympathetic ear to a foreigner's plight and someone who wouldn't, who would you rather talk to?